Today's video is sponsored by Native Sons Goods, makers of the highest quality woven guitar, bag, and camera straps you'll ever see. Native Sons straps are handmade one at a time in the USA with unparalleled love and care. Click the link in the description to check out their new expanded lineup featuring all new 3-inch guitar straps. And remember, when you support my sponsor, you support this channel, and I sure appreciate it.
Hey y'all, it's Shitpost Friday.
Hey, how's it going, everybody? Brad the Guitologist here. It's time for
Shitpost Friday.
First up, this Shitpost Friday, I just want to explain to you guys, if I don't get very far in editing this Shitpost Friday and I have to upload just this first little piece of commentary, you'll know why. My dad's in the hospital currently. If you guys don't mind, say a prayer for my dad. He's been having some problems with his esophagus and stuff, and he was taken into the hospital last week, and actually I spoke to him yesterday on the phone, and everything looked like it was okay, and he had made it out of this surgery that he had to have, and now it looks like it may not be quite so okay. So I don't know what the next few days is going to bring, but please, if you don't mind, say a prayer for my dad, and I really appreciate it. First up in the guitar world, I wanted to show you guys this. I've kind of been loosely following this story about Echopark and Gibson for a little while. I've reported on Echopark and Gibson a couple different times in their little agreement that they had, where Echopark would produce some Flying V's and some Explorer models under license in their Detroit factory. Echopark's a very small kind of boutique builder, and I had surmised at first that they might actually be building Gibson custom shop actual guitars in that factory, because a couple of the news reports early on made it sound like they were going to be putting Gibson badges on the headstocks of those, so it was very interesting from that standpoint. So that's when I kind of began following this story, but it's sort of developed into a weird kind of internal fighting sort of thing now, as Echopark the other day, they put up a thing on their, I think it was their Instagram maybe, or their Facebook page, where they were sort of calling out Gibson and saying, you know, okay, they had two guitars side by side. One was their guitar and one was like an Epiphone or something like that, and I think the Epiphone was a Joe Bonamassa signature, and the other one was a replica of a guitar that they had built for Joe Bonamassa himself. You know, a boutique guitar that cost thousands. I think like $8,000 was the price tag on that thing. But they put it up saying, oh, can you tell which is the real one and which is the fake one, or which is, I don't know. I don't know exactly the wording that they use, but I'll have it up here, I'm sure, in a picture so you can see it. But Joe Bonamassa himself chimes in down and says, you know, kind of takes them to the woodshed a little bit and says, hey, you know, he says your guitars are kind of crap, essentially, and said that the finishes on the one that they built for him weren't great, and he just had all these complaints, and he was like, yeah, I ended up selling that guitar that you built for me. And then one of the employees of Echopark a little later on chimes in and said, hey, you know, I don't appreciate you kind of you know, doing that, kind of calling us out like that and being mean, essentially, and it just kind of devolved from there. And now we have a situation where Echopark is no longer going to be producing these guitars under license.
My new path is to get back to where I can build affordable guitars that still maintain all the integrity, you know, all the playability, all the electronical components, and all the finishing, and all the really important details here in Detroit by Detroiters. And for the first time, hopefully in a long, long time, I think in the history of guitar production here in America, produce an affordable American-made instrument.
I think both parties have said that they might revisit it after the first of the year, but it seems now, as of this moment, like this licensing deal that they had hoped to kind of get underway with Gibson has completely fallen apart now, and it may be because of this Joe Bonamassa little spat that happened online. So that was kind of interesting. A lot of drama surrounding that. Of course, Joe Bonamassa, I'm sure, has a little bit of pull with Gibson, you know, considering, you know, all of the Gibsons that he plays on stage, and he's constantly kind of keeping Gibson in the limelight. And he also has, you know, the signature Gibson thing. If you're into drama-filled crap, you know, that's You should be at home reading on this one. Speaking of drama, thought this was a bit interesting as well. This article talks about Johnny Depp clutching a broken guitar, kind of walking around Venice, Italy with it. And apparently he had been to the Venice Film Festival, and they're kind of asking him all these questions about, you know, why he's carrying around this guitar. It looks like an old parlor guitar. Actually, it looks like an American parlor guitar, but it says on the side there, just a tad broken, with a big piece of tape, so maybe the guitar had split down the side or something like that. But to me it looks like an old, maybe, possibly like an O style Martin, a double O Martin. It looks like about a double O size Martin to me. But anyway, it was interesting, I thought, because deep down in this article they started talking about his recent Christian Dior Sauvage fragrance ad that he did. I actually used that fragrance. I'm not a shill for Dior. I just happened to use this fragrance. It's actually pretty good smelling stuff, I think. But it's funny because, you know, the whole problem was they put this ad up and it had like a Native American dancer in it, and Johnny Depp playing an electric guitar, which, you know, again, it's a cool thing for guitar to see an electric guitar being played in someone's ad, you know, that they would feature that. But they had to pull the ad off of social media pretty much immediately because there was a backlash, and I'm sure you guys can already guess why. Everyone said that they were culturally appropriating the Native American dancer. Dude, if you think that they're culturally appropriating, then why didn't the dancer himself think that, you know? When he obviously didn't think they were culturally appropriating. They say that they were working with these tribes to try to do this they call it a project, but it's an ad, in a way that's the least culturally appropriating they could possibly do, or whatever that means. I don't even know what any of these terms mean. This is all new speak to me. This is like Orwellian newspeak, cultural appropriation. You know, it's just a way to kind of stamp down people's ability to borrow in and out of cultures, and it kind of puts up walls between people. You know, you got a lot of people talking about how they don't want walls between cultures, and they want cultures to mix, and they like diversity, but then they bitch about this sort of thing when people are genuinely trying to introduce diversity into their projects or into whatever. If you didn't want Native Americans having any kind of acting roles at all, you know, this is what you would do. You would bitch about something like this, and you would call every single thing that anybody tries to do to include a Native American into the projects that they're trying to create as cultural appropriation. And that's gonna pretty much ensure that, you know, nobody can hire a Native American to do anything. They'll just stay away from it next time. You know, they'll be like, oh, well, Dior got in trouble when they tried to do their commercial with the guitar and with the Native American guy, so we're just going to stay away from it this time, and that guy's family is just going to have to not eat this week. It's like, come on. Let actors be actors. I think it's the new Bill Burr special on Netflix. He was talking about this a little bit. He was like, yeah, you know, they're bitching so much about it. They don't even want a role where a guy's playing a quadriplegic to be given to anybody who isn't an actual quadriplegic. That's why it's called acting, guys. Like I said, you're just taking jobs away from people. You're making sure that this guy, who is probably a well-trained dancer, he's probably spent years doing it, you know, and he gets his big shot to be in a Dior commercial and get a salary, get paid. And I'm sure they still obviously paid the guy. But the next time that somebody wants that kind of thing in a scene or something, they're not gonna hire the guy out of fear. So it's just really sad. You know, you're putting these people out of work. That's what you're doing. Another really long New York Times article that I read the other day. I'll put it up here, where they're kind of talking about, you know, the cultural appropriation of blues music and African music and all this stuff. And, you know, they kind of go way, way back into like minstrelsy, back in the early 1800s. Like I said, very long article. A lot of good points are made in the article, you know, I will say, but a lot of the points aren't really quite so good or aren't so well founded. We used to call the United States a melting pot for a reason, because we accepted the fact that we're in this melting pot and that we have all of these traditions and we have all these different people, these disparate groups and tribes, and, ideologies and all these things coming together into this melting pot, this grand experiment called the United States. That's the history that I learned in school. It's part of our identity as a country. It's about all we have going for us. The fact that we have one united flag and we have a melting pot. And, like some of the things that we've been through as a country should have brought us closer together. All of the trials and tribulations of slavery and Jim Crow laws and all these things that happened in our distant past, particularly with the slavery in the distant past. All this stuff, largely has been resolved, and a lot of the problems that we try to present as being so bad in the U.S. really don't even exist. They're a creation of media, as far as I can tell. I don't go out of my door and see a bunch of people fighting with each other. I don't go to the store and see all this crap, these people fighting with each other. It's just, it plays out on social media and in the dinosaur media. As far as I'm concerned, it's a load of crap. But of course, I'll be called a racist for even suggesting such a thing. But what would you have people do? Would you have, for instance, Hank Williams not sit down with the old blues man and try to learn his licks and try to get to know the guy and get to know where he came from, and and try to share his pieces of his music in with his own music and incorporate these different musical styles to further country music? Country music is an amalgamation of a few different styles. Hawaiian music, for one, is a big element with the steel guitars. That is probably the most defining element of country music. But then you do have, obviously, you have blues in there as well. You have blue notes all over the place, particularly in older country music. You have that everywhere. You also have Appalachian styles. You have old English and Scottish and Irish folk tunes coming into the mix, and reels and jigs and things like that coming in. So it's again, this is a melting pot, guys. This is what we do here. If you don't want people to be excluded and you don't want a cultural appropriation, whatever the hell that even means, you have to allow people to mix it up. If we're not mixing it up, then what are we? We're just going to stay separate? I mean, I thought we got over that, the whole separate but equal thing. I thought we got over different water fountains, guys. Are you really wanting us to go back to that? Because that's what this is all kind of leading to, it seems to me. I just don't get it. So between this and between that New York Times article, I just thought it was interesting that this idea of cultural appropriation in music just keeps recycling into the consciousness of Americans, where I don't think it has to be there. So anyway, there it is, right out there for everybody to see and to weep over. Speaking of weeping over things, this Chicago GuitarSpace owner, store owner, is weeping today because he had pretty much every guitar stolen from his shop. And when I say shop, I mean it's basically his lutherie space, because he is a builder of guitars. And shortly after he closed his shop up, somebody went in and just robbed him blind and stole every single guitar that was in there. All of these guitars were custom built by this guy. And again, if you see anything branded with Chicago GuitarSpace or looks like any of the guitars that you see here, please contact this guy. There's a phone number on his Facebook page where you can contact him and alert him what's going on. I'm sure they're probably, at least some of these are probably going to turn up again at Chicago area pawn shops. Hopefully the guitar community can come together and rescue this guy, because he's really bummed, he says, and he doesn't know if his insurance is going to cover all of it. Some of the stuff a couple of the guitars belong to clients, and it's just real sad when this happens to somebody in the guitar community. And hopefully we can come together and help this guy out and help him recover his guitars. Speaking of recovering guitars, this gentleman, initially he had put up his Keisel guitar for sale because he was trying to fund his 5-month-old niece's funeral. And the guitar community that he was on came together to raise money for him. Out of their acts of kindness, They were able to raise $3,800 for this guy so he could keep his Keisel guitar and so that his niece could have her funeral expenses paid for. She died of sudden infant death syndrome, or SIDS, at 5 months old. We're just exceptionally sad. I don't even know where to begin with that one, but it's just touching that the guitar community helped him out, and yeah, just really heartwarming to see that sort of thing happen, and hopefully more of that happens. Like I said, we should all be coming together and helping each other out where we can and loving each other. And all right, guys, so I think that's probably going to do it for the news for right now. I'm probably, even if I do put this up, I might put it up in a pretty raw form, so it's not going to be quite the Shitpost Friday, the polished thing that, you know, program that you are used to. You're going to see a lot of flaws in this one. Like I said, I've got a lot of stuff on my mind. My dad is apparently pretty bad off, so I don't know what's going to be happening with that, and I don't know. I've just got a lot on my mind, guys. I am going to go ahead and check out this viewer mail that somebody sent me. Guy was nice enough to send over. I've got some other stuff I'm kind of in the middle of too. We're getting back to amp repairs, so you guys will be thrilled to know that. I've got a old Night PA amp conversion coming up. That thing was supposed to be coming up quite a while back, but I've been just sidelined on that stuff, man. It's just, you know, I kind of get moody, and I do certain things at certain times, and that's just the way it is, you know. I kind of have the luxury from day to day to be able to pick and choose the thing that I want to do that day. And for a long, long time, it was amps first, amps first. Here lately, I've been trying to build up the channel in a slightly different direction to hopefully stave off what I think might be a real problem going forward with YouTube and their algorithm and stuff. That way, I'll at least have a couple of different feet that I can bounce off of to, you know, if I want to do an amp thing one day, I can do an amp thing. If I want to come back and do more of a news-oriented thing, I can do that and sort of bounce from one to the other. I know it's been really out of balance here lately, but there's a method to my madness, and I'm trying to do it in the way that I see it in my mind as working out best. But I do have some technical stuff coming up. I've got this tube tester, which has been my tube tester for quite a while. I'm going to be servicing it soon. Actually, I've kind of already started. I've got a little bit of film of that going so far, and I've got that Night PA. But I want to open this. A viewer said he was wanting to send me. This is from Jason from is that Roanoke Rapids, North Carolina. Hi Brad, enjoy the channel. Here go a few books you might like to add to your collection. Not saying you need any more tube knowledge, but man, I'll take all I can get. You seem to be doing fine, but reference material is always handy to have lying around. Absolutely. Enclosed is a U.S. Navy Basic Electronics Volume 1 that we used in electronics school in the early 80s when I was in the Navy learning tubes. Has more than just tubes in it, along with an Army manual, tube manual from 1983 and an Air Force tube manual from 1952. How cool is that? Also enclosed are one of Kevin O'Connor's Principles of Power from the mid-90s and a few ToneQuest reports from the early 2000s. I also threw a soldering text from Pace, and they were contracted by the DoD to create all the military spec for soldering. Thank you for all you do for the online guitar community. Look forward to many more videos. Jason Bone. Thank you very much, Jason. I really appreciate it. And let's get a look at what we've got here. Boss DM3 service notes. Well, I've always wondered what you would have to do to get like a full book of all of the Boss, you know, pedals like this. What would you have to do to actually get the book? Because obviously this was in a binder at one time. You know, what would you have to do to get the full service manual for all Boss equipment? It would be really nice to have, for sure. Basic Electronics Volume 1, Bureau of Navy Personnel. Cool. Talking about aligning receivers. A lot of this stuff is probably going to be radio oriented. And we've got some solid state stuff right there. Yeah, this is solid state. Got a tube in it, a couple tubes in that one there, and a bit of solid state. So this is kind of, you know, a lot of stuff that has remained as far as military goes. Let me get the. Sorry, I'm getting my microphone over here a little closer. A lot of this stuff, as far as military goes, has kind of remained tube because they don't want EMP attacks to bring down all of their equipment. So some of their stuff, I think, is still tube. You guys can correct me if I'm wrong. If you guys are currently in the military, you can correct me on that if I'm wrong. But I believe I'm correct in that some of the actual like missile launch systems and things like that are actually still all run by tube technology or dominated by tube technology. In really mission critical applications, it's still tube for that reason, because they don't want an EMP to take out you know, all their stuff, or you know, even something like a you know, a solar storm or something like that could also, it might not be from an enemy, it might not be nefarious, but it could just be something like a solar storm, take out all their communications. Principles of Power, a practical guide to tube power amplifier design. Cool. Oh, this looks great. Anything that's got a lot of schematics in it, you know, so that you can follow along with what it's talking about, is really going to be a lot more helpful than just something that's just full of words, you know. Schematics and, you know, a plethora of diagrams and things like that are always going to be really helpful. Any kind of visual aid. I think that's why a lot of people have, you know, gone to YouTube for their learning process on a lot of this stuff, is just because there's so much better visual aids that people can provide in videos. But yeah, this looks like a great book. Okay, Basic Soldering for Electronics. The Principles and Practice of Making High Reliable Solder Connections. So he was saying these guys are responsible for the mil-spec soldering connections. So they basically developed the military specifications for soldering. This might make for a really good subject for a video. You know, the differences between kind of a casual soldering and true mil-spec soldering techniques, because, you know, you've got all these different ways to do things. You know, those J hooks right there on that terminal. Then they go into soldering to terminal cups. A terminal cup is something you don't see a lot in guitar amps, but it is one type of terminal. This little cup, you can kind of see one in an illustration right here. And they're talking here a little bit about the preferred way to do it, which would be this center one, and then you have the minimum amount of solder here, and then you have a maximum amount here. So somewhere in between these pictures is the way to do it, is what they're saying. It shouldn't spill over. Yeah, a lot of this stuff, it just really has to do with making a good, tight physical connection. You can see the way that they've bent the wire over, so that if somebody were to pull on this, or something were to pull on this wire, it would have a very hard time coming loose from this, because you've got a physical connection around this piece of the terminal. And so much of this is really about just making really good physical connections, and learning how to do that. So yeah, this would be something definitely to probably go over in a dedicated video, and just sort of go through all of these different you know, soldering techniques. These are unacceptable joints, all of these. Each with its own different problem. This one's that's a cold solder joint. Oh, though it's overheated. It's kind of hard to tell that it's overheated. It looks like a good joint to me in this photograph, but this one's been disturbed. So oh yeah, somebody's pried up on this, or it's been hit or something. So yeah, that's a cool book right there. That's really cool. Basic Theory and Application of Electron Tubes. This is an old Army technical manual from 1952. Very cool. This actually is original 1952. A lot of this stuff, it gets reprinted, and you can find this in bookstores, these old Army manuals. But this one's an original one. Oh yeah, this is good stuff here. Basically, all of the technical information that you will find in a tube data sheet, it looks like this is gonna teach you what all of that means, essentially. You know, what a tube does, the various elements in the tube, how different tubes are constructed and used, how to set a load line. In other words, where to set plate voltages and things like that. How to bias tubes. Yeah, that's a cool book right there. And then that's what we have here: Communications Electronics Fundamentals. Yeah, see, it's even got stuff about CRTs in here. Which, like I said, I mean, if you're the military and you're fearing like an EMP attack, and you still want to have monitors in certain applications, I mean, you would almost have to go with the old technology, I would think, unless there's something else out there I'm unaware of. Tone Quest reports, all right. Oh, we got some old lap steel pickups right there. I think that they've got to be talking about like robbing the pickups out of old lap steels, I would reckon. A lot of people have done that, especially like after hearing about Ry Cooter doing it. It's a Rickenbacker horseshoe pickup. There's an old Masco amplifier. Cool. Yeah, that's very cool. There's a different one there. Yeah, thank you very much. I really appreciate that, man. All right, guys, I know this Shitpost Friday's been a little bit subdued. I'm sure you understand. Please hit subscribe down below, and we'll see y'all later.